All right, so Mifare Classic smart cards actually one of the examples why we need lightweight cryptography. Okay, so these cards are produced by NXP semiconductors used in contactless smart cards and proximity cards. Produce more than 10 billion smart card chips and 150 million reader modules. So actually this slide is old. Probably you have to multiply these numbers with 5 or even larger, okay? Because these are one of the most used smart cards in the world. Even our university, our IDs, student IDs or academic IDs are these cards. And also, it used a lot. I will also mention it in this slide. So it uses crypto one steam cipher. So this was actually the main idea behind this course. So historically, look at the back. You have DES, but the key is short. So NIST announced a competition called Advanced Encryption Standard Competition. The winner Rindell becomes the standard. So we get rid of DES. Now we have AES. Everybody's happy with that. So cryptographers actually work on other topics. But in the real world, technology introduces new devices like smart cards. And inside the smart card, you need cryptographic algorithms. And producing a cheap smart card and putting advanced encryption standard in it was not possible at that time. So companies, instead of consulting to cryptographers, design their own algorithms. So this is why we have a steam cipher called Crypto 1. Okay, and this is why it failed. Okay, so target applications for smart cards are public transportation. Actually, in Istanbul, almost every public transportation, car parking in Istanbul, almost all of the places, parking in Istanbul is a problem. All of the places use these cards. Public transportation uses secure smart cards in Istanbul or in Ankara. But this, depends on the country and the city. So in some of the cities, in some places, they even use cheaper smart cards, which is possible to hijack with your mobile phone and, use the public transportation freely. Of course, which is illegal and you shouldn't do it. So this can only be detected if a person physically reaches you and checks your cards. Okay. So these target applications are public transportation, electronic toll collection, loyalty cards. Many loyalty cards uses this, event ticketing, and car parking. So the main problem with this card is that it actually doesn't support this IOSS standard, which is used for identification, contactless integrated circuit, and proximity cards. So this standard actually requires 4 properties. These are physical characteristics, radio frequency, power, and signal interface, initialization and anti-collision. This means that if you have 2 cards present at the reader should know which card they are talking to. So the anti-collision means that you can communicate with more than one card if they're close to the reader. And also the transmission protocol should, is explained in the standard, so it should be, compliant with it. The problem is that Mifare Classic card is not compatible with this 4th, which is the transmission protocol. Actually, the main problem here is that here you have the plain text, you encrypt it, and send the cipher text through this transmission protocol. But you also send the parity bits of bytes of the plain text, which is not compatible with this IOSS standard. And this is one of the reasons we can break these cards. Okay. So how can you know what algorithm or what kind of chip is inside your smart card? Is that if you have an Android phone, I'm sorry for Apple fanboys, you cannot do that. You don't have the ability to use your NFC capability. But if you have an Android phone that supports NFC, you can install a software like this. And if you move your smart card to the phone, it will detect the name of the card, like here. As you can see, it says not supported. The serial number, this is not a secret value. Every card supposed to have a unique serial number. And as you can see, we have 1 kilobyte. This is why we call it Mifare Classic 1K. There's also another version 4K, so it has 4 kilobytes of memory. So this 1 kilobyte is actually consists of 16 sectors, and each sector has secret keys. So this is to, use for, if, for instance, if you have one card and 16 different secret keys, they may be used for different purposes. So this is why the card allows this. Also, you can write some information if the card is going to be used offline. Okay. So I told you that the serial number is not that important because it is a publicly known value. You can always read the serial number of a smart card with your mobile phone or with a Proxmark device. The problem is that in Turkey and in many countries, people sometimes only use the serial number. So for instance, in order to open a door, you put your smart card. It doesn't check your secret keys. It doesn't perform any authentication or anything. It just checks your serial number and checks the database. And if your serial number is inside that database, the door opens. Of course, this is not a good idea. You can read the serial numbers of people by just putting your phone on their wallets and then, copy them. So this is one of the problems. But this is not the main problem. This is a usage problem. The main problem is that the secret keys in this part actually can be captured due to the weaknesses in these cards. And we will talk about them in a minute. So this is a algorithm, a stream cipher designed by the company. And actually, it was kept secret. But people, when they were doing their PhDs in Netherlands, what they did was to cut the cards and then look at with the microscope and, understand how it works. So this is reverse engineering from that part. So they realized that this stream cipher has a 48-bit LFSR here. Okay, so you have the input here, you XOR it with these tap points, and the output is produced from these functions, and the output is produced from here. So for instance, if you have nonce here, you feed it from here. In this part, you have the secret key. You perform the operations and provide the output as the key stream. Then you XOR it with your plain text and provide the ciphertext. So you might ask that, what are these functions, FA, FB, and FC? Actually, they are very easy functions like this. FA is just, as you can see, there are logical operations like OR, XOR, and etc. So these functions are really simple, but all of them are obtained by reverse engineering techniques. This is not announced by the developers. Okay, so a very simple design, and the secret key is 48 bits, and you might say that, okay, I can perform a brute force attack, but actually the access to the cards has some time limit, so you cannot perform 2 to the 48 key trials on the card itself. On your GPU, you can do it, but you don't have the access to cards. So the weakness does not come from the short key. Okay, the weakness comes from other places. So let's see the authentication protocol, and then let's see how we can break it. So this is your tag. This is your reader. For instance, you went to cafeteria and you want to pay for your meal. Okay, you get your card close to the reader to pay the money. So once you do it, you know that these smart cards don't have any battery on them. So actually, they don't have any energy on it. So the reader actually creates a magnetic field. And this way, from the radio frequencies, your card actually can have limited amount of energy. So in that scenario, they send their serial number you, I told you that, which is not unique. Then they send their nonce value, which should be random for every communication. So now the reader knows which card it is talking to. So the reader connects to their database and checks the secret keys of this card from its serial number. So these secret keys are listed in the database. So they choose one, most probably the top sector or the block. And this way, they actually create an answer for this nonce, but it is encrypted now. So this curly brackets actually means that these parts are encrypted. So these are plain text. Now reader creates the answer AR, but encrypts it with the secret key of tag. Also, reader randomly chooses another nonce and also encrypts it with the secret key. So this way, reader also wants to check if the tag is genuine. Okay, so tag now, if it has the secret key, it decrypts these messages and checks if the answer of the reader complies with the nonce they generated. If not, they will say that the reader is fake, so they will terminate the communication. If the answer is correct, they also create an answer to this nonce and also send the answer in an encrypted way. And the reader decrypts it and looks at the answer. And if it is correct, both parties authenticate themselves. Tag is really the real tag, and the reader is a real reader, not a fake one. So actually, let's read the steps from here. The tag sends its unique ID U to the reader. The reader then asks to authenticate for a specific sector. The tag sends the challenge NT. From this point on, communication is encrypted. The reader responds with his own challenge NR and the answer AR, which is just a SAC function for this nonce. SAC function was introduced in the previous slide. It is just a simple thing like this. Okay. And the tag finishes with its answer, replying to the nonce of the reader. Okay, this should be NR actually. I noticed that I wrote it wrong for the first time. Sorry. So, what can go wrong here? There are many vulnerabilities. The main vulnerability was that there were weak pseudorandom number generator inside these cards. So, idea was that, for instance, at this point, you create the nonce, right? So there was a time, like I think 5 seconds. So if you wait exactly 5 seconds and try to reconnect to the tag, they generate the same nonce. Recall that nonce has to be used only once, but now you can force the tag to use the same nonce to encrypt something else. So this way, you can, with just use of 2 same nonces, you can break the system. But this was corrected in the hardened version. So if you have a Mifare Classic card today, most probably you don't have this weakness. Only the initial versions had that weakness. Second weakness was the short key length. 48-bit key is too short, yes. But delay introduced by the communication and authentication procedure prevents online brute force attacks. So you cannot just take your Proxmark here, put the card on top of it, and perform a brute force attack. Due to this delay, it will take thousands of years. Another weakness is the key stream leakage through error. So 4-bit leaks. This is also corrected in the hardened Mifare Classic cards. The main problem here was as follows. So assume that here you are trying to, assume that you are a fake reader. The card sends you nonce. So your answer is wrong. But you also send the parity bits through this communication. If your answer is wrong, but your parity bits are correct, then the tag sends a 4-bit error message, actually. But that 4-bit allows you to, capture 4 bits of the secret key. Okay. So this key stream leakage through error means that you fail to authenticate yourself, but somehow provide the correct parity bit. So the tag gives you an error, but gives the error in an encrypted way. But you know the error value, you have the ciphertext encrypted version, you XOR them and capture the 4 bits of the secret key stream, which is also comes from the secret key. The parity bits, parity of plaintext bytes are transmitted during communication. So this was a huge mistake during the design. Nested authentication. When authentication for a sector for which the key is known is completed, the reader can request for authentication of another sector. This time, tag sends encrypted nonces. So if you know only a single secret key of the card, you can perform a nested authentication attack and capture the other keys. This is a very huge problem because I told you that you had 16 sectors and all of these secret keys for these sectors has to be random. But even in the manual, it is suggested for the IT department to make the last secret key as a default key, like all ones. But if you know that, then you capture all of the remaining parts with this nested authentication. So the problems are huge. So let's see the summary of online attacks. By online attack, this means that you have to access to the card. So in the initial version, as you can see, when you have the here you require to have a weak pseudorandom number generator. In this scenario, if you just communicate with the card 2 times, which takes less than a second, you capture the key. So in the hardened versions, you no longer have this weak pseudorandom number generator. But if the card sends this error code after failed authentication, then you can break the system in a very fast way, let's say. But even if the card has corrected values, if it is even a hardened card, you can still break the card, capture the key by communicating with the card 10,000 times. Here you are actually performing a side channel analysis. Depending on the responses to these 10,000 failed authentications, you actually can compute the secret key in 5 or 10 minutes. So idea is as follows. You communicate with the card this many minutes to capture this many data. Then you go home and perform operations that takes this many time, and you obtain the secret key. Okay. So these are online attacks, but let's focus on the offline attacks. In the offline attack, you don't need to access to the card. So you actually, a brief second of communicating with the card itself is enough. So this is what makes these attacks more powerful. So from Garcia et al., the attacker plays the role of a reader and tries to authenticate for a sector of her choice. She answers the challenge of the tag with 8 random bytes, because you don't know the answer, and 8 random parity bits for NR and AR. So it is obvious that you will fail for 8 random bytes, but maybe your 8 parity bits might be correct, because 8-bit means that there can be 256 different values. So with a probability of 1/256, you might be successful. So you repeat the attack 256 times. So with probability 1/256, the parity bits are correct, and the tag responds with the encrypted 4-bit error code. Great. So you capture the 4 bits of the secret key with this. A success leaks 12 bits of entropy out of 48. This means that in practice, 5 successful repetition of this attack is enough. So we need 5 times 256 authentication attempts, which takes less than a second. So when somebody walking next to you, if they have an antenna, they can communicate with your wallet, a smart card inside your wallet. And this way, in less than a second, they can capture this information. But this information only contains error bit code. So you go home and perform some operations. And in 2010, they said that if you use a GPU like this, it takes 9 days to capture the secret key. So this is a very old GPU, so you can, with modern GPUs, you can really make things faster. Okay, this attack works on non-hardened cards. I also performed this attack, but I optimized it for the GPU because I actually introduced a bit sliced implementation. So in the original paper, they said that they need 16 GTX 280 GPUs, which can perform this attack in 14 hours. But I optimized and used the bit slice technique. So in a better card, it takes 5 hours. So from 9 days, of course, not the same GPU, but still 5 hours is a really huge speed up. So if you use the best GPU today, you can just perform this attack less than 30 minutes or something. Okay, what happened is next, then they hardened the Mifare Classic card. So this 4-bit error code is no longer applicable to us. What you do is as follows. You perform a nested authentication attack. So this means that you already know one of the secret keys. You try to capture the other secret keys. Given an encrypted node obtained through a nested authentication, the adversary can attempt to decrypt it using the candidate key. If the candidate key is correct, the parity bits will be correct. For a wrong key, a parity bit will be correct with probability 1/2. An encrypted node holds 4 bytes, thus 4 encrypted parity bits. Therefore, on average, 12 encrypted nodes are enough to get the key. So this many authentications is enough. So again, they showed that performing this attack on a GTX 460 takes 1 month of time. I also optimized it because they said that, you know, you need 180 GPUs to perform this attack in an hour, and this would cost around $12,000. But again, on a single GPU, I reduced this attack to 7 hours. So in the if you have a better GPU, it takes like 1 hour or something. Okay, so you can break these cards if I mean, you can only use this hardened Mifare Classic cards if all of the secret keys are randomly generated. Moreover, there shouldn't be any active adversary, because there is also a weakness in the card. For instance, when you are paying if you are paying for your meal in the cafeteria, if I listen to this communication between you and the reader, I can also capture the secret key and clone it. So actually, you shouldn't be using these cards, or if you are using, you should be aware of what can go wrong. Okay. So of course, one can think that if so in London, and the Oyster card was like this years ago. So at some point, people started to say that, okay, I put money on this card in the morning, and in the evening when I go back, I realize that it is zero. This means that somebody, when walking past them, copied their cards. So when academicians found these weaknesses or reverse engineered this algorithm, actually the company wanted to sue them because they wanted to not to publish the papers or censor them. But the academician said that this is freedom of speech. The weakness belongs to you, so you should correct them. But the company was also saying meaningful things like, if you announce it like right now, many people will be affected. So they went to court, but the court said that this is freedom of speech. So if there is a weakness, it should be the responsibility of the company. So, but NXP is a very good company. They gathered all of those cars, produce better cars, and now in London Metro, the cars are secure. So, but of course, this might lead to the misunderstanding that maybe since this happened years ago, maybe nobody is using these cards anymore, but actually we are using them almost everywhere. And actually we are even using weaker smart cards. For instance, this is a screenshot from NXP Mifare Ultralight. It's a very simple smart card. Actually, it is printed on the device when you pay a few euros when you want to buy a Metro card. Instead, like Porto in Portugal. So these have more weaknesses, so which can actually allow the user to use it freely on the public transportation. So when you design a system, you have to choose in a clever way which smart card you need to use in that scenario, because some cards might break your security, and maybe accessing to a building might be a huge step for somebody else. So for this reason, these smart cards should be selected in a very clever way. And of course, the users should be informed about the capabilities of these cards and what can go wrong.